Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. Tonight's guest is the councilman from the 12th Council District, which includes the Bronx neighborhoods. You can count them: Carp City, Pelham Gardens, Allerton, Williamsbridge. He knows them very well. Olinville, Eastchester, Edenwald, Baychester, Wakefield, Woodlawn, and Pelham Bay Park. We've got a lot to talk with him today and tonight, including the mayor's City of Yes, the Metro North stations coming to the Bronx, empowering our youth, housing, and much more. Please join me in welcoming Councilman Kevin Riley to BronxTalk. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Gary.
Thank you. We're thrilled. It took us a while to get you here.
I know.
Tried.
I'm sorry, man.
No.
We got a lot of things going on in the Northeast Bronx.
If you're busy, that's probably a good thing.
That's a good thing, yes.
Let's just start with the mayor's state of the city.
Yeah.
He focused on three themes: protecting public safety, rebuilding the economy after the pandemic, making the city more livable. What sticks out for you? What did you hear that you said, I like that? Or, I'm not so got down with that?
Well, I think the main thing that I was mostly concerned about was making the city more livable. I think that's everyone's concern right now. We're going around and we realize that we're in a housing crisis, but what are we doing to actually address that? We have space. We can't produce more land within New York City, so what are we doing with the space that we have here in New York City now? So the mayor later last year, put out his agenda for the City of Yes, which he went into yesterday, which, there's some very key parts to it that I do like, some key parts that, we have to discuss as well, pertaining to different makeups of different communities. And also how he's taking care of New York City. New York City has to be livable because we have to maintain, the quality of life in New York City. Containerized services is something that's huge that he spoke about yesterday. I'm really, really pleased about. The displeasure of going around your community and seeing garbage bags just piled up on each other, potentially bursting and breaking, and then that garbage just in the streets.
I was going to say again, garbage not in bags.
Yeah, not in bags. So I think that just the visual, just having your community like that, goes into the effect of how you treat the community as well. So we're from the Bronx. We're always, first in everything bad, last in everything good. That's a very popular saying, especially when you're elected official from the Bronx, because that's true. So when the mayor had his State of the City yesterday in the Bronx, that's a very good sign as well. But, we really want to focus on housing and making the Bronx more livable. Something else that he really focusing on yesterday is the education system.
Before we get there, let's talk a little bit about the housing. I know you can run through the whole thing better than most of us, but let's just talk about this housing thing. To me, plots of land, opportunities to build housing. I'd love to see a community plan.
Yeah.
In other words, to say, well, maybe this is a good spot to build a taller building and add more apartments. And of course, then how affordable are the apartments? Maybe this is not a good area, but it seems like the imperative is just sell it. In other words, just sell it and buy it, put it up. And then later the community says, well, that wasn't really the right place for it. How do we get, and you're the chair of the subcommittee, the land use subcommittee on zoning and franchises. How do we get that right?
So if everyone knows my story, prior to me becoming the council member, I worked in state government. And state government doesn't really have control over land use that happens within New York City. So I know coming into office, I really wanted to focus on applying myself within the land use committee. So I'm on the land use committee where I chair Rafael Salamanca, but I've also been on the subcommittees as the chairs, landmarks, public dispositions, and landmarks, and also the subcommittee on zoning and franchise, which is extremely important because when you look at how certain communities are zoned and have been zoned for years, what the plans that are being portrayed, especially in the mayor's City of Yes, and the city council also put out our own framework. The speaker put out a housing framework, which will involve more community input and have communities a part of the process where we're educating the community about the land use that's happening within the community. One thing that I learned coming into city council, my district was bottom 3 with producing housing within the last decade. So I have a lot of people from my community that can't afford to live in the community no more. They're being priced out. And then it goes...
Let's just do that. So if you can build housing for them that's within the context of the neighborhood, you don't want to destroy, a row of private homes, so to speak, then that's the way to do what I was saying, build a community.
My point is never to disrupt generational wealth, especially within a predominantly Black community.
Right.
When you look at home ownership and you look at the makeup of District 12, we have a lot of homeowners outside of Co-op City, which is a cooperative development. So we have potentially tons of homeowners that live in that area. The issue that happens is many of the homeowners can't afford to live there no more because of certain legislation out there that's not really there to support homeowners.
Right.
We don't really focus on homeowners when we think of housing. When we focus on landlords, the legislation we're putting out there is really for the large landlords. We're not thinking about the smaller landlords.
This fits right in with the city of Yes and the notion that if you are a homeowner, you can now more liberally cordon off either a section of your house, maybe even put something in the backyard, depending. Is that a good thing, or you got school seats for them? Do you find you're going to potentially get people who are just building stuff out of code? How do you feel?
Well,
about that?
it could be a great thing for them, depending on the neighborhood it's in, and depending on how you're doing the process. So that's the sellable dwelling units that you want to make sure that you have the appropriate infrastructure and housing structure to build that dwelling unit, and you're able to give housing to somebody that is in need of housing. But also you're able to pay for your mortgage. Like, we have homeowners that are struggling paying for their mortgage. Property taxes in Northeast Bronx, Southeast Queens is extremely high. So you're worried about property taxes. You're worried about the cost of your mortgage.
So if you can rent some space.
If you can rent some space out, and you can have some form of passive income that's coming towards your household and your family, you're able to keep your house.
Right, but of course, those other problems are there. I guess that comes with, you got
to talk about the sewage system. Our district has a lot of residential issues as well.
And this leads perfectly into the question of the Metro North development, because I saw it's a preliminary map. I don't know if it was exactly the Co-op City stop. I forget which stop. It might have been the Co-op City stop. And they were showing what the plan is. Are you satisfied that this is going in the right direction and we won't get out of context development, and because there are a lot of fears of stuff like that?
Well, the biggest issue with the Metro North and Co-op City is everybody's really focused on the parking aspect. How is this going to affect parking? A few garages in Co-op City have closed. They don't have garage attendants anymore. So they're just worried about parking in general. That's why with the Morris Park Station, that's why they're focused on having the parking aspect over there. And the Co-op City Metro North is really, really driven and focused, and it's really infrastructure going to be built for Co-op City residents. And that's what it needs to be focused on. Co-op City is a community filled with 50,000 people.
So the idea is to not have people come from the outside and go, but people within Co-op City to be able to use.
Well, that's fine to have people from the outside go, but where you can't drive from the outside and go, that wouldn't be the primary location you would want to drive from the outside and go, because there's nowhere to park. And if you're coming in a community that's already having issues with parking, then it's going to add on additional problems.
So for you as the council member in that spot, that is, as you start to see those maps unfold, that's going to be a chief concern for you.
Yeah, it's been the chief concern prior to me becoming a council member. When I was going to the community meetings when we were discussing it, it's still the main focus now. We're not going to add parking to Co-op City. There's no space over there to do so, but we have to set up infrastructure. We have to bus routes. We have to make sure bus routes are available there. There's potential talking about community van that can help people coming from outside of Section 5 to actually come to that side.
And that sounds like a business that can...
That sounds a business that can flourish within the Northeast Bronx.
That can flourish in the Northeast Bronx. Yeah, just hearing you talk about it, I wonder if the congestion pricing would require more parking at the northeast end of all the parts of the Bronx, over there in Woodlawn, et cetera, because people are going to say, well, I got to drive into Manhattan. I may as well, drive from Westchester or Connecticut, leave my car far north jump on the train and go downtown.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to add. It's definitely going to add to it. I mean, of course,
I want that community plan, Councilman. That to me is what I want to hear.
No, it's crucial to have that community plan, because when you're talking about congestion pricing, you're going to have an overload of people that are driving into that area who are going to utilize the Metro North. You got to think about it. You're going to get to the city within 15 to 20 minutes, opposed to driving to the city is going to take you 2 hours, plus you have to pay 2 new tolls.
Yes, right.
And then on top of that, if you take the train to the city, you have to worry about the issues with transit.
I want to move to another aspect of your work, which I know is very personal to you and very important. And I mentioned to you just before the show, when we started BronxTalk 30 years ago, one of the questions that came up in the beginning and still gets asked today, and of course, something that we're going to bring up to you, is what do my kids do after school?
Yeah.
And if we don't have the right facilities, if we don't have the right activities for them, then we get youth who are out of control, so to speak.
Yeah.
Your concern has been getting young black men on the right path. Talk to me about where we're at. Talk to me about the vision, because in the Northeast Bronx, it's always been a concern. Talk to us about where we are at, if you will.
Well, something as an elected official, you want to make sure that you're interacting with everybody within your community on a personal level. And when I say a personal level, that's outside of this suit, more
on the basketball court.
More organic. So a lot of people may see you online. I may be playing basketball. I may just be hanging out with some boys that go to a high school in the district called Academy for Scholarship and Entrepreneurship. So I started a young mentorship group called Limitless Leaders. That's the name that we named the group this year, but we started the group last year. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to expose the young men to different career paths, but also give them some form of affirmation from men that look exactly like them. So what I was able to do, I took them on a few trips to Delaware for the Black Male curriculum tour that they did out in Delaware. I took them to the New York Stock Exchange.
About how many people are?
So we're talking about 25 to 30 young men.
Wow.
Yeah, 25 to 30 young men.
And it's funded through the council and through your discretionary?
No, it's just personally.
Wow.
Yeah,
Isn't that wonderful?
So what happens is, actually this year we actually were able to fund it discretionally because we partner with a nonprofit called Aim High.
How bad is the issue? Oh, I know they Aim High, folks, very well. How bad is the issue right now? Do you feel like we're getting somewhere? I mean, 25 is a nice start. We've got hundreds, thousands.
Yeah.
When you look back or take a step back and look at community of young people, young black men and young people, especially in your community, what do you see? Were they doing okay? Are they out of control? Is the gang problem a huge problem?
Well, gang problem has been around for years.
Always around.
It's always it's been around. Fortunately, it's going to still continue to be around for years. But when you're talking about giving kids a safe space to actually do things that they enjoy to do, when we grew up, you could have just gave us a basketball hoop in the park and we're outside. You're driving by parks now, and I remember going to a park growing up. I used to have to wait to have next.
Third game next.
Third game next.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So, but now you're going to parks and the park is empty.
Incredible.
Kids are more into technology now. Kids are gaming now. Kids are becoming young journalists now. They're actually going around.
That I won't complain about.
Yeah, they're actually going around interviewing each other. So if you're giving them a space to actually be creative, and that's what I can say about our kids are brilliant and they're creative. But if they're not given the space and they're not invested in, then that's when given the opportunity, that's when they stray away. And that's what we do with Limitless Leaders. We try to invest in them, we give them the opportunity, and we expose them to different paths.
I mentioned the Edenwald Rec Center. I remember before we had the YMCA. I'm going to make the assumption the YMCA has been a tremendous addition to that.
It's been beautiful. It's a space where you can have intergenerational connection there. You have seniors there. You have families that are growing their children. Myself and Senator Bailey, we do swim classes there with us and our daughters and our children. So it's something that's very important. Sundays, I have a connection with a few men. We come around in the district, we play basketball together and just check in. And a lot of the boys from the program, they actually come and play with us as well. Actually, today I took two of them.
Excuse me, what a great thing that is that a young man or a young woman, I mean, we know a lot of the young women play ball too, that they can go and hang out with their council member on that level. And if you call a foul, be fair. Don't just call a foul if you miss the shot. Yeah,
but it's deeper than that. It's deeper than basketball. Like today, I took two of the boys They went on a basketball workout tour with college, but they're just being exposed to different things. I'll have meetings. They'll look at me on Instagram and see different meetings and programs that I have, and they're just getting more in tune and engaged with it.
What's the relationship? Now, I mentioned to you before the show, and we talked about the Edenwald Rec Center many years ago, way back at the beginning days, and probably in the 90s of BronxTalk. We did a forum between the local precinct and young people who were sitting there, and we really had a nice engagement. What's the relationship between people and the police in your district? Young people in particular.
Well, I do too. In my district, the police in my district, I think, do a good job with trying to relate to the community. That we have good community relation officers, specifically in the 4-7, which is predominantly a lot of my district. But we have really good commanding officers that come out and work with the community and try to connect. But with the youth, there's still a disconnection.
There is.
There is an extreme disconnection,
and
that's
mistrust.
And mistrust, and that's something that needs to be fixed moving forward, because our youth are being subjected and seeing more issues with police and them happening on a daily basis.
Give me an example of the kind of thing you say that there still is mistrust. Kids hanging out and the cops tell them to move. I mean, does that go on and then they feel like they're being unfairly challenged? I mean, I don't want to make something up that isn't there. But what makes you say that there is mistrust? That's so interesting.
Sometimes kids, I think we all remember when we were kids, and kids are just going to be kids. Sometimes they're a little bit too foolish, and there's a way of approaching them. They could approach them a little bit too aggressively, sometimes and I think that's something where the mistrust kind of comes. It's unfortunate, and Brother Sherman Brown from Aim High always says you have to connect before you could correct. And I think that's something extremely important. But it's just for us. It's not only the police job. It's for everyone in the community kind of to work together to create an ecosystem where we all could work in the same community and live in the same community. I think that's very important. I
want to ask you specifically about crime and the relationship between kids and police and the civilian reporting bill.
Which how many stops?
The mayor, it's very interesting because Mayor Adams was on this program many years ago when he was a state senator, supporting stop and frisk and supporting legislation to rope it in. But now he's not in favor of this civilian reporting bill. You get the feeling the city council is ready to override his veto?
I am confident that the city council will override the veto.
He said with a smile.
No, the reason why is when this city council came into office, and when you have a majority woman-led city council, you really have some real power there. And I think the city council wanted to make sure that transparency and accountability was something that's happening within our police department. And with this bill, the How Many Stops Act, we're just requiring the police to report on lower 1 to offenses when they're interacting with the public. The misinformation that's going out there is if the police are just connecting, like they're just seeing some boys playing on the court and just talking to them, hey, what you guys are doing, they don't have to, report that. And there's a misconception that it's paperwork. No one does paperwork.
That is what the mayor's been saying.
It's no more paperwork no more. And it was a very creative video that he put out there, but it's no more paperwork no more. Like, we moved away from that in 2017.
So in other words, they would do it electronically.
Yeah, it would be done electronically, and it wouldn't be a burdensome process. It's NYPD's process, so they have the power to not make it as burdensome as they think it would be. So I think when we're talking about this, we need our communities to trust our police. We don't need what happened.
Vice versa.
Yeah, we need our community to trust our police, and we need our police to trust our community. And if we're going to have a safe environment, we need to push legislation that's going to get some transparency and accountability. And as a black man, before I was an elected official, I'm a black man that came from the Bronx. I have been subjected to being stopped and frisked by the police department, and it's not a very comfortable feeling. It's a traumatic feeling, actually. And if we're going to address it, we have to push some form of legislation there to actually address it. So I understand where the mayor's coming from. He has to lead the city, and his biggest thing is public safety. He has to make sure that the economy is doing good. He has to make sure that his residents are being safe as well. But us 51 members in the city council have the same job, and we feel like this is the way to make sure that the community is safe.
I remember former borough president Ruben Diaz Jr. told me, I think it was when he was an assembly member, and he told me because I had assembly plates, and he said, and I was just kind of wearing my regular clothes, I was stopped and they frisked me and they wanted to make sure. I was like, wow. He said, yes, I really am the assembly member. That that had to be very insulting, and I'm sure you would appreciate his concerns.
Yeah, it's insulting, and it's something that happens on a daily basis.
What's your thought on, because it's coming up now, and the mayor is very strong on it, mayoral control of schools. You mentioned that he talked about education.
Yeah.
You know he wants to keep mayoral control of schools. What are your thoughts?
I feel like it. I trust David Banks. The reason
Somehow I knew you were going to say it because
he's
been an educator here for many years.
You know why I trust David Banks, and maybe this is more personally. David Banks was my brother's principal at Eagle Academy and helped out my family tremendously with getting my brother down the right path. Now my brother has a beautiful family. He has a big home out in Jersey. He's a plumber. He's very successful. And growing up how we grew up, where our father was locked up, and just having somebody that really cares about the students and the people that live in the community, I trust David Banks. The issue with that I'm seeing now is, are we equipping him with the right resources to actually execute the job that he has to do?
Specifically, funding for
funding
schools,
for
which
schools,
comes out of the state, of course.
Which comes out of the state. Funding for schools, we have to lower class sizes right now. That's the big thing that we've been talking about for years, to lower class sizes right now. We have to improve literacy right now. And that's one of the big things.
He changed the literacy program.
And that's one of the big things I like what the mayor said yesterday with NYC Reads. This is a beautiful literacy program that's going to help our students educate themselves and learn how to read. When we're looking after the COVID-19 pandemic, we don't realize how detrimental that was to everything that happened during that time, the ecosystem, small businesses, healthcare, but most importantly, education. Our students were in the classroom. They weren't able to engage. You had to really be committed to doing reading, right, at home, while you're being, interrupted by several different things within the household. So I really feel like equipping the Chancellor Banks with authority will definitely help us out.
I don't want to ask you to give us a grade on schools. I hate when people do that. But what's your assessment? I mean, I know you visit many schools, you talk to many people. Are kids happy? Are parents happy? That's an important aspect of it.
I think kids are happy to be in school, but they're looking for more out of school, I feel like. And that's why we're going around. We're trying to make more STEM labs in school and make school more modernized. I think a lot of schools aren't modernized and invested in our communities. And that has been something that's been a priority for us since we've been in office. To go around, incorporate these STEM labs within the school, fix the cafeteria setting so they have, healthy areas where they could consume food, fix the fitness and wellness area so they have their gym space for their athletics. A lot of schools I learned in my community don't even have a sports team, an athletic team, because they don't have the infrastructure to actually have it. Yeah, so
talk about what our kids really need.
Yeah.
Just on that note, one of the things that I have seen is kids were in front of computer screens for 2 straight years.
Yeah.
And and that was class. And who knows how many of the kids just put their name up and didn't really participate, or who knows what went on there. We got to get them out of this. Like what your mentorship program does is exactly what they need. They got to get out of that classroom.
Yeah.
That's my sense, because they've been sitting still for all this time. So, whether the governance
it's a new day and age for learning.
Well, to me, again, what your mentorship program does, taking those kids out. As you start the beginning of the year and you look at either legislation or other things that are out there, I mean, I'm kind of repeating to you things that are currently in the newspapers. What is out there that you think can be moved forward for you and for your constituents this year? What would you like to see? Let's envision. Wouldn't that be nice? We envision a plan. But what are your thoughts?
Well, some piece of legislation we're going to focus on this year. We're trying to have a bill that will create a 3-digit hotline from when there's going to be gun violence. So if you know that somebody is possibly...
Oh, you mean preventing gun violence instead of after the facts?
Yeah. So we want to be preventative instead of, responding to an issue after it happens.
How would that work?
So pretty much they will call the number.
So in other words, if somebody says, I know somebody's got a gun, and my son or my friend has a gun, and he's going out to find his girlfriend's guy or whatever.
We're going to find someone, they're able to call the hotline. The hotline will translate it to a Cure Violence group. within the community, and they're able to address the issue on a more faster level.
In a local community.
Yes.
And of course, assuming you're going to get the the NYPD involved.
Yeah, I mean,
of course,
you have to in some sense, but it will be something more safer instead of it's more intervention.
It's
instead
funny.
of criminalizing.
We're waiting right
Yes.
after the fact. Which is very interesting because the NYPD correctly was very
And we
proud.
actually got that bill from rap lyric.
Oh, really?
Yeah, from J. Cole. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We'll have to do more on that. When that comes up, we'll have you back. We'll talk about
most
that.
definitely.
I forgot what I was going to say. If you look at the ballistics software that they have, the ballistics ability to, if you hear a gunshot, they can automatically identify.
Yeah.
That's good because then they can get there, whatever happened, as soon as they can. But that's not preventative.
No.
That's all after.
It
the
happens
fact.
after. Yeah,
And so the NYPD was, that's pretty exciting for me. What on the zoning committee and housing do you think is?
So this year we have to assess the mayor's City of Yes plan. I think we're going to be voting on it by the end of this year.
Will
I
it
think
be
in
a
October.
piecemeal thing, like a budgetary thing, so you can vote yes on this or no on this? Or is it going to have to be we vote for
We're going
the
to vote
plan?
on it in October. The entire thing in October.
In October.
Yes.
But I mean, is it going to be portioned off? So we'll approve this and approve this, but not approve this, or they're going to have to.
Yeah, you have to.
Okay.
Well, we just did the carbon neutrality portion of it
Right.
at the end of last year.
That was
so that
probably
was
easy.
a concept. That was a real easy
Yeah, I
part
was
to do
gonna
of
say,
it.
yeah.
So the carbon neutrality aspect of it we approved last year. So there's different parts that we have to approve, but in totality, everything should be approved in October.
Councilmember Kevin Riley, thank you so much for joining
thank you.
us.
I appreciate
It's great. We could break down everything in your community, but you came in here open-minded and ready to go, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
So we want to thank our producer is Rebecca Hemick, our director Will Guzman. We have a cast of thousands working with us here in the studio. I'm going to thank Amanda from his office, who's also here. She helped us put this together and actually get him in the seat. And next week, we'll host the commissioner of the New York City Commission on Human Rights, which will be very interesting. I'm sure something you're quite concerned about. And if the curtain don't fall and the creek don't rise, we'll be back next week. Good night.